pop open my demo here. So this is going to be a pretty quick example just to preface this before we get into it. I'm going to show the creation of a folder workspace where we can have files that get approved. We'll have a little button on demand to send out the approval, and we'll look at some opportunities where we can make this process a little bit better. I am going to go fairly quickly here. Normally when I'm doing a tutorial, I'm a little bit more walking through the steps that I'm doing, but for today's session here, this is really showing the art of the possible, and as someone who does this lots, I'll show you how fast this can be done. All right, so first up here, we're starting on a SharePoint site, and I'm going to go ahead and make myself a document library. Let's think about an HR use case here, and maybe these are policy documents that need to be approved. So I'm going to go ahead and make myself a new document library, and I'm just going to use the blank template and make this my policies. And of course, you're going to follow good habits like writing a nice description on your work. All right. So now I have a folder for some files. Let's go ahead and plop a file in here. I'm just going to make myself a new Word document. We'll call it a policy, and we don't need to put anything in the document. This is about the document lifecycle itself. I'll go and write a document about our webinar here. All right, perfect. So I've got my webinar plan written out by our bot now. We've got our webinar buffer slot document, and we can look at the approval of this. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple columns on SharePoint. The columns are the data we're using. One thing that's nice about SharePoint is you can treat your files and folders like a spreadsheet, so we can have extra data about our file. And so I'm going to add in some columns here about the approval. So an approval has a person, so who approved it, we'll call it the approver. And then I'm also going to add in the comments from the approval. So approval comments as a multi-line of text. And then I'm also going to add in a date for when the approval happened. And finally, I'm going to add in a status choice of the approval. So we'll have approved, rejected, and pending. And I'm just going to adjust the colors here so these are a little bit clearer for the goal. Approved will be green, rejected will be red, and pending can be yellow. Perfect. All right. So now I have a folder workspace. I have a file in here, and this file's got a couple properties on it. Let's go ahead and set up an approval to send based on this. All right, so we'll go to Power Automate, and I'm going to go ahead and make myself a new workflow. And this is going to be a simple flow, so we're going to have this one as an instant flow, because I'm going to say press a button and get an approval. Be my employee experience policy approval workflow. So I'll give it a name there, and I'm going to find it on a selected file on SharePoint, and I'll click Create. All right, so now I've got that set up here. We're going to go ahead and pick our SharePoint site. So I'm going to pick my employee experience site with the new policy library that I've made. And when I send the approval, I'm going to have a couple things I want to add to the approval. So I do want to have, when someone sends an approval, I want them to be able to ask who is going to do the approving. And we want to maybe give them a little message too about why they're receiving the approval. So I'm going to add in an email address for the approver. Please enter an email address for the approver. And I'm also going to add in a text field here to input. This will just be custom message or something like that. Any other details to send to the approver. All right, so I've got my inputs in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and get our approval ready to go. So first thing I'm going to do is get some more information about this file. I want to link to it to make that a little bit easier for them to find. So I'm going to get the file properties, and I'll pick my employee experience policy, and I'll get the ID of this item here. And then I'm going to go ahead and we'll start our approval. And I'm going to start and wait for an approval. And this is a built-in thing from Microsoft. So if this is part of the low-code world that we get where a lot of the work has been done for us, this is already a built-in approvals engine. I just need to set up who's getting the approval. So in this scenario here, we have a couple choices. Everyone can approve, or the first person to approve. And then this is just either approve or reject or custom choices. I'm just going to assume this is one person approval. So I'm going to do the approve or reject with the first person to respond. And for the title, I can get mix some static text and some dynamic text here. So new approval is requested for file, and then I can put the file name in there. So I can get the name of the file. And now who this is going to be assigned to, I'm going to assign this to the email address of the person who's been asked as the approver. For the details, we had that custom message that we asked, so we can send a custom message into the message body. Please approve the file. Here's some extra detail. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in the link to the file as well, and the file name again. So we got a little something to take the person to. And then on here, I can also say who this approval is coming from. And so this can be the person who pressed on the button to send the email. All right, so I've got my file, I got the details so I can get my link, and I'm sending out the approval. Now let's do something once the approval comes back. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a condition, and I'm going to do this based on the outcome of the approval. So if the approval is approved, then we're going to mark the item as approved, and if it fails, then we're going to mark the item as failed. So let's go ahead and update our SharePoint item now. Whoops, I need to update the file properties. It's a file I'm working with. Update file, and then I'll pick my SharePoint site and policy library again. Make sure we get our ID number. And then here we can see all those properties. So we have the document title, who the approver is, the comments, the date, the status. So the approval status is approved. The approval date is when the approval completed. The approver claims is the person who completed the approval. So we'll get the approver's email address. And then I'm also going to get the comments that came out of there. Now I'm not touching the rest of these, so I'm just going to clean them off out of the screen here. So we have our approval, and then we go and update our file based on our responses. Now I'm just going to pull lazy here and copy this from one side to the other, because the only thing we need to change is that the approved is a rejected. And then we also, I need to do something with my loop here, so I'm just going to pull this out of the loop email again. All right, so we've got our approval and rejection there. And then I guess one more little thing I'm going to do just for the user experience is I'm going to copy this step again, and we're going to update the file as pending while the approval is started, just so that that's a little bit better for the end user. So right before we send our approval, we're going to mark it as pending, send our approval, and then if it's approved, we're going to update the file saying it's approved with the comments and details. Otherwise, we're going to say it's rejected. All right, so that's a basic file approval workflow. I'm going to save this, and we can just test it to see what happens. All right, so we've got our workflow here. We've got this enabled. So let's go back to our SharePoint site. I'm just going to refresh the page, and we should be able to use this workflow now. So I have my file. I click on the three dots, and in the automate the workflows, it's going to check for workflows that are available, and it should find our employee experience policy approvals. So now if I go to send this file off, it's going to ask me to set it up for the first time to sign into SharePoint. And then I can pick who the approver is. I'm going to send this to myself. And then I can have a custom message in here. So please review this webinar policy before the session. Now, I can come here and I can watch the workflow run behind the scenes. So I can come here and take a look at what's happening as it goes. So it's gone through, it's done our first few steps here. It's updated the file properties, and now it's started and has waited for the approval. So let's see what's happened. If I refresh this page one more time, our properties have now been set to pending, and the approval is running. I received an email and a Teams notification in favor of not opening my mailbox in the webinar. One more place I can see this is there is actually an approvals section in Power Automate. So I can come here and I can see the approval as well in one more place. So I received an email and a Teams notification and a notification in this approvals section here. And they all look pretty similar where I can see the approval. There's the link to the item. So I click on this, it'll bring me right to the file so I can see the file that we were drafting. And I can review it, see who it's been sent from, which was Riley, and I'm other Riley. And then I can choose my option here, so I can approve it or reject it, and I can put my comment about how great the plan is. Now, in my history, I'm going to see that approval, and that'll be here forever, so I can see this approval logged here in my history. I can also, on the file, if I refresh it, see now who it's been approved by, what the comments were, the approval date, the status has now been approved, and SharePoint has this nice thing called the version history where I can see all those changes as they had happened. So I made the file, we marked it as pending, and then we marked it as approved as it went through the lifecycle. So all of what I've just shown you is built in, and if you have a Microsoft 365 license, even the business basic tier, this is all available to you. And then the world's your oyster from here. We take this up and we make a 5-stage approval. There are different conditions for when that approval goes out. Maybe someone doesn't click a button, it automatically goes out under a certain scenario. Every day you check for files under a certain condition. This just starts to expand and become way more, there's way more you can do with it. Before I pass this back to you there, Jeff, do you have any questions about the demo or what I've just shown?
Maybe just walk through at a higher level what we've seen here. So when we queued up the demo, we talked about simplicity in design. You've shown in a few minutes, you've got the ability to think through, design, set up, test, and then ultimately execute a very simple process. Is this scalable?
Yeah, so I mean, we just see this scaling up to multiple departments need a workspace like this. Like I said, with this process, I have made approval flows that have been 20 stages of approvals where we have had a very long process with internal and external people supporting the life cycle of like a contract, for example. And so we've seen that scale up quite well on longer and larger engagements. One place it doesn't scale well is Power Automate has some limitations, and it's just a matter of working with an experienced partner to work around them. For example, the approval of a regular Power Automate flow can only live for 28 days, but if you design your approvals in a special way, it can live forever because we can work around that timer. And so there's lots of different things that we can do to kind of enhance that experience. But in a quick 10-minute session, we can put together something like this that can be a module and a pattern you can use across the organization.
I think when you move beyond the tools, though, you've built an organization around the philosophy of automation and the benefits from organizations looking to find these opportunities, right? So whether or not it's a Microsoft platform, the concept should be the same. You're trying to reduce process volatility by getting the human out of the equation and creating simple, consistent design that's repeatable, reliable. Is that sort of fair?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also just a matter of like organizing the information as well. If this approval wasn't here, it's buried in somebody's mailbox. Mm-hmm. And so it's a matter of just bringing those things into a central location. Like this is now there's an approvals database in the Microsoft world here that we have. So now all of these approvals are in a central spot, and any administrator could see all of the approvals that have gone through the system and these records here. So I think it just kind of also reduces some of the disparity and the scatter in an organization because we're making consistent processes that are using central repositories to track this kind of data.
Okay, brilliant, simple example. I really appreciated the demonstration here. Why don't we step outside of the demo before we open it up for live Q&A with